Hey guys, Eclipse14 here, and welcome to what is the last part of my PlayStation 1 collection. I've got the final 17 games to make up the last set. I've got 3 single jewel cases left to go, 6 multi-disc jewel cases left to go, although only 2 of them are actually 2-disc by technicality. And then we've got a couple long boxes and some big boxes. Alright, last episode segged in one part of the series. We're gonna go ahead and begin by getting the other game of the series out, and let's end this stuff. I segged out the last episode with R-Types, and the other game that was actually part of the series that came on the PlayStation was R-Type Delta. Now, R-Type Delta is the 4th game in the series, but from what I can tell, this is the one that seems to be the most forgotten because of its extreme obscurity. This one, I had known the game existed for a long time, but it was very, very difficult to find a copy of this game for a decent price. Most of the time, the disc alone was usually $75 or higher, which was outrageous to think. And then all of a sudden, finally, this particular copy shows up online. This is a pre-order. For only 36 and a half. Yeah, as you notice, there is a crease right in the middle of the manual, and that may be it's probably part of the reason why it's actually so cheap, but I don't think that, because the disc is actually in fairly good shape. The case I could replace easily, that's not a problem. But, how I could find this game for as cheap as I did was absolutely unbelievable, so I quickly strong-armed myself to actually get this game before it sold out quickly, because this game usually at the time was like 75 to 80 bucks, and I think it's still that way too, because it's such an obscurity and it's so rare that it's difficult to comment, and I've never ever actually seen a single copy of even the disc of this game since my pre-order. So I am happy that I really got this game, and I like this game too. I've only been able to play through half the game, but I love the gameplay of it. I would love to at least show some gameplay for the channel when I get the chance. If I can play through it all the way to the end, that would be really, really awesome. Next off is a game called Tomba. Now, I had recognized this game's existence mostly out of looking around online, but this and the second game I actually found out in the wild. And the original price tag for this particular copy was 40 bucks, and dropped down to 30 for me because they knew me pretty well. But my dad convinced them to go down to 20, assuming I did something that was fairly easy to do, so no problems there. So I got very lucky in actually being able to get this copy for as cheap as I did, because the next time I saw it, they put it at the retail price, which was about 80 bucks, and that is extremely high. Now, I've played this game about an hour and a half, I think. Never really got too far into this because there are a couple things that it was difficult for me to really actually get a hold of, because it was definitely different in terms of the gameplay style. It is a platformer sort. It has a couple different things going on, but it's a really unusual mechanic. And maybe that's why this game is actually desired in some way, shape, or form. It's definitely a rarity in its own right. Prior to this, I've seen 2 copies since I got this game. All I really know, I don't have a whole lot to say about it because I've only played it for so long. And it's difficult for me to really comment on it because how it plays is unique. I should give it a chance, because I thought of playing it again pretty recently, but with PS2 going on weird stuff, that's what's been setting me back. Now, I did mention the second game existed and I had it in my collection. This is the copy. Now, this is one that I don't remember the price of, but I do remember it had a fairly near retail price tag, which is slightly less than Tomba, but has since changed to be around Tomba's price, so it's like 80 bucks or something like that. But there was a 30% off going on, and I bought this game with another game that I eventually sold off, so I don't really remember the price of this one too much. What I do know is that the original disc I had some writing on it, and eventually I found a new disc in order to replace it, so now I have a clean front disc. This game was, I played over halfway through it and then I got stuck somewhere and I just never returned. But I really liked how this game played. And I didn't play the first game all that much. I ended up playing the second game more because I saw this one first. And I recognized its existence mostly out of looking around eBay. So I knew the thing existed and I knew it was quite a rare series. This is definitely a game that I really do want to give a chance to. The only real difference between this game and the first game is the first game is a 2D style, whereas this one is like a pseudo 3D style. So playing it is actually pretty interesting, and maybe I might actually give a chance at both of them at some point in time and show them to the channel. But yeah, both Tomba and Tomba 2 are pretty rare and also pretty high on the price tags. And that was my final single jewel case, which means now we enter our multi-jewel cases. And we're going to start off with a bang with an Atlas game. An Atlas game called Thousand Arms. Now, Thousand Arms is a mixture of a role-playing game with a dating simulator. In the form that it's basically like, I'd say it was more like Sakura Wars in some way, shape, or form, because if you made one decision, your intimacy improved, otherwise it dropped most of the time. So it was kind of hard to really guess which girl depending on their personalities. So in this instance, I've got disc 1, I've got the manual, and I've got disc 2. Now, I originally bought this game with just the discs only in the case that I've got. This was, it was 25 bucks. I ended up having 20, but I exchanged the shitty Yoshi Safari in order to get the 5 bucks needed to buy the game. And as you notice, there is a sticker here that is the Thousand Arms sticker. I don't own the extras for this game, unfortunately, and that's going to be a pain in the ass for me because there's 2 extras that came with the game. The first is a hologram card featuring one of the major scenes of Disc 2, and the other thing was 4 memory card stickers that was on, like, receipt paper or something like that. I actually have 3 of the stickers attached to the case, so I really can't decide how much it's worth because I'd never seen anything else that had anything close to it. I found another copy that did have the manual, and I bought the manual off of it. So that's pretty much how the condition of this game is. I have completed this game, and I really like the battle system of it in the form of you have a certain amount of speed. Whatever command you do has so many arrows, and as soon as the arrows are gone, you have to press the button to make a command move. So it can be really intense as far later the game goes on. And overall, I really enjoyed the game. Definitely a little bit cheesy on the voice acting nowadays, but it's definitely a game that I would like to show off to the collection, mostly out of an obscurity purpose. Collection, fucking channel, derp. Yeah, I'd like to play this game for the channel again, because I've beaten the game once, and I really would like to play this game again, because this game definitely really interested me. As for price tags and things go, this thing's definitely high on the list, because Atlas is Atlas, unfortunately. I think this thing is like, I think 60 minimum now, and I paid 35 total, because it was 10 bucks for the manual and 25 for the case. And the next game, as of today, remains the most expensive game in my entire collection. This is the one that carries the highest price tag. Now, I didn't pay that much for it because I bought this game a few years prior to it spiking like crazy, but it still doesn't escape the fact that it still carries the highest price tag today. And that is the first Persona. Now, how did I get this game? It was a bulk deal. I bought 4 games. I bought this, Skies of Arcadia for Dreamcast, Vi for Sega CD, and RC Pro Am 2 for the NES. All 3 of them combined together, which, with a cash deal, totaled 300 bucks. This carried the highest price tag at 100, which, with the cash discount, it's actually a little bit lower than that. So even that was actually near market at the time, slightly under that, because usually this thing was like 120 plus complete. Nowadays, the disc is that much, and that is absolutely bonkers to think about that. Nowadays, a complete copy of this game is 300. The fact, when I first saw that this game got so high, it blew my freaking mind, because I couldn't believe that that was how high it would get. I thought it would have been possibly because of the fact that PlayStation Classic was adding Persona into it, But still, the very fact that this game got so high, just, it still blows my mind to this day. Now, in terms of gameplay, the disc is actually in extremely good shape, so I've been really reluctant on playing this game because I know it's a really expensive one. And the fact that this spikes so high definitely pushed it a little bit farther. I think I've only played about 30 minutes just to make sure everything was fine. Definitely liked how it was going, so I might give it a shot, but the high price and the condition definitely makes me a little bit nervous. Uh, Suffice to say the least, I'm very glad I actually own this game because it was already BS high as it was, but the fact that it spiked as high as it did makes it all worth the trouble. Next game begins the Working Designs Collection, which is definitely a really good company in its own right because they had some really good games, and most importantly, they actually gave a shit about their fans. Anyway, we start off with Vanguard Bandits, which is actually the only other cased PlayStation game that is incomplete. In the form of, this is also the only one here that is 2 discs. Except the distance here is that this is the game disc and the manual, and what was supposed to be the second disc, which I don't have, was a demo copy of Lunar 2. So how I ended up getting this, originally I had just the case and the disc, but I recognized that this was the instance. And originally the guy that had this did not want to sell the game to me because it didn't have both discs. But considering I knew that Vanguard Bandits was just the only disc and the other was just a demo, I convinced him to actually give me the game for 25 bucks. Eventually, I found a second copy, and that's how I ended up getting the manual, because it was just the game disc in the case when I bought it. Found another copy, and paid a little bit more than I really wished for a book, but for a game like this, you gotta justify yourself, because it was only 25 bucks, and I think it was like 15 for the book. So 40 bucks for a game that complete was like 80 bucks at this point, I think. The disc itself has definitely increased in price now, so I have no idea how much this would technically be worth, because most of the time when it was cased, it would have both the Lunar 2 disc and whatnot. So I can't really gauge how high the price is, but I definitely know it's quite up there. As for playing the game itself, I have completed 2 of the 3 endings, and the only reason I haven't found the third ending, well, actually, there's 3 paths and 5 endings in total. I've covered 2 endings, and one path is only accessible if you complete one of those 2 other paths, and then have your save data processed and reach a certain point in the game. For whatever reason, I can't get that to register, which has been a common issue for this game anyway, and that's what's kind of been irking me for a while. So I've considered playing the game for the channel because of the interest of the game, because it's a really neat game. It's like Xenogears and Final Fantasy Tactics together. But that little bug that causes the third path to be busted causes quite a bit of problems, and that's what's been holding me back from trying to play the game again. I would like to give this game another shot and if I could pull it off, but we'll see what happens if I can manage to pull it off. Next game is Alundra, and this is an instance where I found the second game first, which I do have and is actually not connected to Working Designs in any way, shape, or form, but it was an instance where I wanted to play the first game. This copy here remains the only complete copy I've ever seen in the case. I have seen the disc only once, and I got very dumb lucky with this one because I got lucky enough to manage not just a complete copy of the game, but very few copies actually own a map. And I specifically put this in the middle of the manual just to keep it safe because originally it was it was behind the manual and I didn't want to damage the corners. So I put it in the manual to keep it safe. I'm trying to pull up the map right now. But that's the main village. And the other side is a blur up of the world, in a way. Now, I've heard that there's actually 2 versions of the manual, and this secondary part actually doesn't exist on the second version. So I got very lucky in actually finding this one. And it remains the only complete copy I've ever seen, with just the case in the book, let alone the disc. Complete copies I've seen 60 at the minimum, with the map, I've often seen them like 80 plus, I think 100 at times. And my copy is in fairly good shape, and I have completed this game. Really, really enjoyed it, but holy crap, is it a dark game. Um, Definitely one that I enjoyed, and would love to play for the channel when I get the chance, because I like the style of this game, and the dark story just adds on. It's a beautiful game in its own right. And of course, I also have Alundra 2. Alundra 2, this case has been cracked so many times it's not even funny. It is cracks galore. There's more of them right there. Good God. There's even cracks on the inside, by the way. There's one right there. There's the manual. There's the disc. Is there cracks on this side? Actually, no. It's the only side that's clean. What the hell? But, this one's pretty much the bastard one of the bunch, because technically it's not even connected to the original Alundra. It's just a more lighthearted storyline that just takes the name. This is a game it's not terrible, but there's definitely a lot better. And I've actually tried to play this game multiple times, but every other time it's just been pushed back because of some crap going on and whatnot. So I've only managed like a third of the way through the game, and I have been wanting to give this game a chance multiple times, and I just haven't been able to do it. Maybe once I actually do complete Alundra, I might give this game a shot and be able to play it. But we'll see how the list goes. It's definitely not up there on the list. And the next game is my final jewel-cased game. And this is a game that is also my... Actually, no, I have one more pre-order, I think. Yeah, one more pre-order. And that game is Elemental Gearbolt. This is another one that I pre-ordered, mostly because this game is notorious for being very rare to find in the wild. So I had a feeling it was definitely going to be a pain in the ass. And after I got my copy, I did see another copy in the wild, asking for $60, just the game in case. My particular copy I paid $50 for, and has the book and the Nell disc, which is this girl. Sienna is the other one, and that's the one I found more commonly. So I wanted this one specifically because I didn't see this one as much as I did the Sienna disc. This game is interesting in its own right. It's my only light gun game on the PlayStation, but you can play it with a controller, and I definitely play it on a controller anyway because I don't have the gun. Oh my God, this game is actually... The game is great for its time. The story is unbelievably dark, and it's just... The problem is, because it's a light gun shooter, the story is fairly short, and if it went on much longer, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I have beat this game, and my God, it's a trip already, but I really wish it went on longer. This game is also extremely expensive in its own right. I think nowadays complete copies are over $100, and at the time when I bought it, 50 was a little bit surreal. Normally it was like 40, 45 for Sienna, and Nell was usually non-existent, but about the same price. Now it's increased to over $100, so I'm really glad I got the game when I did, because it's already extremely difficult to find the wild, the high price makes it even more justifiable. So I'm very, very happy I got this game. And that's all the jewel cases. However, there's still a few more games to go. And I still have a couple Working Designs games. And that's actually because they are in some special big boxes. And I'm starting off with a game that is well known on the Sega CD that got ported onto the PlayStation. Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, which is one of my best games that I got in terms of purchasing. I got very lucky and bought the game for only $5, which was surreal at the time. So I strong-armed my stepfather at the time, who was with me at the flea market, that I found this thing, because $5 for this, I definitely needed to get it. So I'm going to go ahead and just open this right now, because I'm definitely going to take a little bit to do this anyway. Inside this case, we have a special leather book instead of the usual books that come inside. Definitely has been in very good shape. It is really neat. And then there's the case. The case, unfortunately, has some internal problems in the form of the arms. The external arms not keeping the discs in. So pulling that up, as you can see, that's both disc 1 and disc 2. So let me easily try to pull these out. There we go. Definitely try not to touch them. There's disc 1. That's disc 1, which should be right here because the arms are broken for no fucking reason. There's disc 2. The art's usually very different on every different one, and there's also a fan art version that actually carried the 2 game discs that made Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, which I did have a copy of until I sold. Yeah, I'm trying to be really cautious on this, so that's why I'm being really slow here. Now, this disc right here is actually the Lunar soundtrack, which is the only PlayStation disc that I have that isn't a actual PlayStation disc. It's actually just a normal PC disc. So, that's the soundtrack, which should go right there. And I'll talk about this plastic thing in just a second. And this disc is the making of Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, which is as it is. Now, inside this here is a cloth map. And I refuse to open this because it remains tape sealed. I have actually seen a full copy of this game with the seal gone and the cloth map open. So I have seen the full map. But I'm definitely not taking this out just because it's been sealed for fucking 20 years. Definitely a thing I'd love to have that I'm glad I got. The only unfortunate thing about it is that I never really got to play the game all that much because controlling was kind of a pain in the ass, and knowing that this was going to be a long game, it was going to be a troublesome round all the way through. So I was really reluctant in order to actually play the game. I'll cut it off recording. But I'm really glad I did get this. I've played it a little bit to recognize just what it's kind of like. I would like to get the chance to play it, and I also would like to get the chance to play the Sega CD version. But other than that, that's really all I have to say about it. I have seen the Lunar 2 book, I will say, the Lunar 2 box, but I've never been able to actually pick it up. Nowadays, the Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, both of them are well over $100. Lunar 2 was at that at one point, and Jesus, it's going to be a pain in the ass to get Lunar 2, but if I can get it, that would be really awesome. And alongside that, I have another big box in the form of the Arc the Lad Collection. Now, this game I actually managed to get $30 for, and normally these things are a bare minimum of $80. This is a big box, which means there's a lot of crap in it. Now, I would open it for you outright, were not for the fact that I already did so. And that was because, in the middle of first attempting this, the camera dropped. So I took everything out just outright. So, in the middle here is the leather booklet, which has some more wear than the other, the Lunar booklet, that's for sure, but it's still a very good book regardless. I'll get to this in a second. And then we have the Arc the Lad Collection case, which includes 6 discs. There's the first disc, which is fine as it is. And we flip over here, we've got Arc the Lad 2. And Arc Arena Monster Tournament, which is a side game from Arc the Lad 2. Then we've got Arc the Lad 3, Discs 1 and 2. And looks like Disc 1 just slipped. So let me just fix that correctly. Put that together. There we go. And finally, there is the Arc the Lad, the making of. Now, the issue with, except for the making of, for whatever reason, there's some kind of fog going on all the Arc the Lad discs, which doesn't make any sense. Now, Arc the Lad was actually single games released in Japan, and we just managed to get a full collection just outright. So that's neat to have. Now, inside this Omaki box is quite a few interesting things. We'll go ahead and just flip it up right here. I still have the original paper for this, and inside here is 4 thumbstick covers depicting 3 of the characters and simply Arc the Lad Collection up here. These are figurine standees from Arc the Lad 3, which I've never opened. And finally, an Arc the Lad memory card case, which I've never been able to open because God knows why. So, quite a bit of stuff in here, actually, and definitely one of the neat things about it. I have tried all the games to make sure they work, but I never really played them to the finish because I didn't really expect to get this game, and I never gave them a chance. Maybe I should at some point, but That's quite a bit of work to do, considering I've got 3 games to deal with. Oh boy, this is going to be fun if I ever even get the chance to play the game. But yeah, Arc the Lad Collection is like $80 plus, so I'm glad I got it when I did. And with that, we close off all our jewel case stuff and all the small cases and begin the early days of the PlayStation that covered the long boxes. And we start off with a game called A-Train. Now, getting all of this together is probably just going to be a pain in the ass. I'm just going to do that and be done with it because I don't have that much space to actually record, and this thing won't minimize its scope. So, A-Train is basically SimCity with trains. That's really all that is it's SimCity with a 3D rendering of just taking a train around the city you've made. Now, the problem with this particular box is that it sucks. This cardboard really wasn't the best thing, so they quickly switched to jewel cases or a different modified case, which is much better. I have the disc, I have the book, but the condition of the box is just, it's complete garbage. And for a game that's, it's fairly uncommon, but it's also not very expensive either. So I ended up getting it pretty easily. I think it was like $10. At max, this thing usually is about 40, which is unusual because it's just SimCity. I really wish the case was in better shape or in one of the more modified plastic cases because, yeah, I recall, I've seen these long boxes before, and they are a pain in the ass to have in really good shape. So, I'm hoping to see if I can find a different copy of this game. Next is Tekken. There it is, Tekken. Now, this is one of the jewel case examples of a long box. And this one is actually, I got this thing for only $5. And the long box game is actually how it was originally released. But it was available in the jewel case, and that was the way it was in Greatest Hits. There were a few copies of the Black Label jewel case, but that's what I've heard, and I've yet to actually see one. Now, I have actually beat this game. This, as it is a fighting game, I haven't put a huge amount of time into it. But I do know that there is a Galaga minigame at the start of it, and I've definitely played that quite a few times, mostly out of that. But playing Tekken actually felt pretty fine, especially considering it was an early PlayStation game. Definitely one of the best games on the PlayStation up to that point, and started a really good series in its own right, because Tekken 3 was awesome, and the series is still going with Tekken 7, so this is the start of something that was really good. And it plays really well, and all in all, it's a really good game. Next off is XCOM UFO Defense. Now, out of all the games in my entire collection, this is currently the only one I have that I have not actually tested. I have not put this in the game at all, so I have nothing to really say about it. What I do know about XCOM is that it is humans versus aliens, and it's also known for its permadeath. You lose the character, you lose him for good. This is also the only case that I have where I have the foam for the disc, and the disc is also in fairly good shape. I've seen this game go really pricey at times. My particular one was $30, and I think usually at minimum they're around 40. I've seen copies go for as high as 70, $80, but I'm not super certain on that because I don't think the price for this game is very stable. It's unfortunate that I really can't say much about it because I haven't tested it yet, but I am going to give it a shot pretty soon just to make sure everything's fine. Next up is a game called, Discworld. Now, Discworld is Terry Pratchett's flagship series, which he started in the late 70s and continued all the way up to his death. And these things, from what I've seen, because I haven't actually read the books, unfortunately, but from what I actually first saw this cover, this was the biggest freak of acid nature you could possibly imagine, because the whole world takes place on a turtle that's flying in space. How the fuck is that guy surviving? Anyway, I have the disc here, and this is what I was talking about the plastic cases, because they're so neat. If I take this out, you get this cool little artwork, and my disc is in fairly good shape, having paid $20 for it, and at some point this was actually a rental case, because there was a sticker up there, there's a sticker on the book, and there's a sticker on the back. So this had to have been a rental at some point. I've played the game for 30 minutes or so, and what's difficult about this is that it's mostly a point and click. If I remember it right, this was the PC port, so the PlayStation mouse was acceptable for this thing. And trying to play around on a controller kind of made it a pain in the neck, but then again, I never really gave it too big a shot. There's also Discworld 2 that was available in a jewel case format, and that was a game that was definitely on my list for some time. Now that I own the first game, I definitely need to look for the second game. Complete copies of Discworld I've often seen around $40, but I think it's been higher since then. I'm not too certain. Next up is the go-to survival horror that is Resident Evil. There it is. Yeah, this game was originally in a long box. If I recall, it was one of the last long boxes, if not the last long box to be released on the PlayStation. Eventually, it got released in the jewel case format, then it got a director's cut, then it got a director's cut DualShock edition in the form of the greatest hits format. So this thing has gotten modified and re-released multiple times, but the first release is the Resident Evil long box. Unfortunately, some kid had this thing in his backpack for a while, and as a result, the case is in bad shape. Definitely need to find a new case, and definitely need to find a new manual, because the manual is also in pieces. Some pages are detached. That's the artwork of that thing, and unfortunately, some arms are broken. Nope, there we fucking go. There's the whole thing. Yeah, the top is actually what's busted here, so it really sucks that this is the shape that I have to have this in, because some asshole kid had it in his backpack just showing it off and never had any care for it, because a long box copy of Resident Evil is very rare and oftentimes can get extremely expensive. I paid $18 for it due to its condition. Normally these things are like $50-$60, and I've seen some copies that got some people were asking 10 grand for them. Of course, they never went that high. But there were a couple copies that sold for extremely high prices that were brand new long boxes. So I have played this game a little bit. Fucking cheesy as hell in this day and age, but it's all good because the remake on the GameCube makes it all worth it. Definitely a great start to the survival horror genre, to say the least. And we close my collection with game number 85. Which, in all accounts that I've seen, is the rarest long box game, and by a long shot, one of the 10 rarest PlayStation games. A little game called Starblade Alpha. Now, Starblade is actually an arcade game that was a 3D rail shooter that actually became one of the influences for Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. Eventually, the game got ported onto the Sega CD and the 3DO under the name Starblade. PlayStation would get it a little later under the name Starblade Alpha. This was also a pre-order, by the way. It is actually the only pre-order I have ever made to come from Canada. Specifically, it was like northwestern Quebec or something like that. But this copy is actually in fairly decent shape, and I bought it for fairly cheap because at the time, this game was so obscure. Having 10 results on eBay was unreal. It was absolutely surreal. There would be less than 10 copies. 2 would be disc only, and very few completes would ever even come out. I ended up buying this game for 30 Canadian dollars, which at the time was 27.10. And it is complete. Hang on, let me try to pry this off because case is getting weird. So anyway, I've got the book and I've got the disc. The original disc I had a Blockbuster sticker all over it. But I knew a dude that actually had this particular disc, so I replaced it, and it looks a little better now. The only problem with my copy is, if you've seen, the binding on the case is starting to wear off, so I have been trying to fix that. I need to glue it, most importantly, but I got to be really careful on it, because it's a very rare game, and I don't want to have like glue blotches or some crap on it, so I have to be careful. I just have yet to do it, so that's the problem. Nowadays, when I got this was very difficult to find even online. Nowadays, they've become more stable, and the price has definitely hit like 150 plus on a number of occasions. How much it usually goes for now, I'm not certain, but what I do know is, for a long time, and still is. It is the rarest long box game on the PlayStation, as well as one of the rarest games on the PlayStation in general. I'm really glad I got it as early as I did, when it was obscure as it was, because it is one of my biggest treasures. I have actually completed the game. It is extremely short, but it's all worthwhile because it's a very fun game. And finally, I bring my PlayStation collection to a close. Holy shit, this took nearly a week of recording each night in order to actually get all of this done. Oh my lord, I'm recording this just after midnight on September 1st, which is probably when this is going to go up after part 4. But my god, that took very long, and I'm kind of glad things turned out okay, because some games I was able to play for a little bit, some games I completed, and that's pretty much how it went. So I guess next up is going to be the PlayStation 2 collection, which has definitely a lot less than the PlayStation. But as for if I need to make it into different parts or not, I'll have to take a look and decide for myself. So with that all said, I hope you enjoyed the 5-part series. If you haven't seen the other episodes, go take a look. Take a look at the other collection I've posted since then if you feel like. And if you feel like it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I'll show off more of the collection and do a couple games and whatnot, because that's what I'm usually doing. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys next video. This box is freaking huge. And that's because there's a lot of shit in it. So let's pull this sucker out and see what we got. There we go. Okay, 3 things. First off, the middle is the leather case book, which has a bit more wear compared to the Lunar book that I showed. Definitely looks okay. There's the ribbon. Yeah!